The Financial Huddle does not provide tax, legal, financial, or other professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to consult with their own advisors in these areas.
All right, everybody, huddle up. Play calls in. This is the Financial Huddle. Ready, break.
Welcome, everybody, to the Financial Huddle. I'm so glad to be here today. We have a guest, Alecia Barnette, and we're going to be talking about a topic of long-term care today. As always, I am here with my partners, Ryan Fleming.
Hey, everybody.
Ed B. Miller.
Hello, hello.
And Huddlers, so glad that you made time today. Alecia, we're really grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule to talk about a topic that is affecting more and more of our clients. I can say specifically this is an issue that's affecting me personally and some of the family. And we want to just get a better sense of how to approach this and what people should be thinking about and looking for when they think about the topic of long-term care. So Alecia is the Senior Vice President of the Care Planning Division. Financial Independence Group is one of our business partners, and this is a group that helps some of the top advisors in the entire country. They've been a tremendous help to us as we look at different strategies for our clients, and long-term care is one of those particular strategies. So Alecia, welcome. And I would just start out by saying, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the space of long-term care.
Absolutely. So thankful to be here, first of all. So appreciate you having me today. I've been in the business for 28 years as it relates to long-term care. So a lot of exciting things over the last couple of decades in my career. We've certainly seen the landscape change when it comes to long-term care planning. There's a couple different ways you can mitigate the risk. In fact, there's more than two ways, but the primary ways have certainly changed, as I mentioned, from when I started originally in the business. First, it used to be traditional long-term care. I like to use the analogy renting your policy versus owning. Traditional long-term care was pretty much the only thing sold 20, 30, 40 years ago. It was mostly nursing home insurance. Then they graduated to have both nursing home and home health care. And it's really the cheapest way to buy the most amount of long-term care. But with that expense comes potential rate increases. There's no death benefit if you don't use it. There's no exit strategy if you change your mind. And now we're seeing innovations to these solutions that are on life insurance or an annuity chassis that cover the same risk, but you have a benefit whether you live, whether you quit, or whether you die. So again, owning your policy versus renting it.
Yeah, Alecia, again, welcome to the Huddle Nation. And you hit upon something there that is kind of what I call the old paradigm versus the new paradigm. And I think you and I have had a discussion in the past to say, if you don't have a plan for long-term care, your plan is your
money.
It's your own money. So in your humble opinion, with the new paradigm situation that you just mentioned, where has that been most advantageous for people trying to address the long-term care?
Honestly, it depends. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach out there. Everybody is unique in the way that they're made and the way that they're going to fund the plan. And the beautiful thing about these new solutions is there's 101 different ways to do it. That's the bad news, and that's the good news.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will tell you is you really need someone to help you do the heavy lifting because there are so many options. So as far as it being advantageous, it depends. We typically see ages 45 to age 87. So you're never too old. I think that's one of the things to keep in mind. And there's a lot of different ways that you can fund these plans. So if you're high income earners, you can use income to fund the plan. If you have money sitting in the bank, money sitting in CDs, conservative assets, it's really a better way to self-fund. You're getting tax efficiencies and pennies on the dollar leverage. Also, if you have old annuities or old life insurance policies, you can refinance those into solutions that are going to give you that additional tax-free leverage for care. So another great way. And then, of course, last but not least, many of us have a disproportionate amount of money in qualified funds. You can actually utilize those. Now, you're never going to get out of paying Uncle Sam, but we can show you a more tax-efficient way to do that, still get the tax efficiencies, and still get the pennies on the dollar leverage for long-term care purposes.
Yeah, and Alecia, kind of echoing, the statements you just made is, why have the hybrid approaches become so appealing in the marketplace? And I think you've touched upon it where, we always hear from our clients, in responses, well, long-term care's too expensive, or they just don't know what options are available out there. And in many cases, just the whole purpose of our podcast is centered around financial literacy. So, with that being said, how are these hybrid approaches, working in the current marketplace, and what advantages do they have over the more traditional?
Absolutely. So the traditional long-term care solutions, they're still great solutions, but they're not the most popular options. I think one of the disadvantages that you'll find with those solutions are the rate increases. So my years and years and years in the business, I've seen some of these older policies increase anywhere from 15% to over 300%. And that's a pretty large pill to swallow if you're on a fixed income. And what we're seeing now is many people are having to reduce their benefits to be able to afford the policy. So even though they thought it was expensive then, now those rates are going up. Now they're having less and less benefits. That's a losing proposition. We're also seeing a shrinking marketplace on the traditional. So you really truly have more options with the hybrid long-term care solutions. Again, you have the benefit whether you live, whether you quit, or whether you die. So people like paying into something where they know you're gonna win regardless of one of those three options.
Yeah.
The leverage is still good, like the traditional long-term care, but you've got the death benefit, and that's if you don't use it, you don't lose it.
Yeah, it's kind of like you don't get the sensation you're paying into something you're not going to get that benefit on. So, can you speak to the differences to our listeners about morbidity versus mortality? Right. So a lot of these new hybrid approaches are based on mortality, not morbidity. And do you find that being a significant difference with people getting accepted or saying yes or no to one strategy or the other?
I think that's a great point to bring up because they are different from your traditional life insurance solutions or even just your straight long-term care solutions because you're essentially using your money first and then you have that additional leverage. So the underwriting leniency, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to qualify for these solutions versus straight life because you're not buying, for example, a big life insurance policy. Essentially, if you don't ever use it, your premium dollars will go back to your beneficiaries.
Right.
So unlike the traditional life insurance solutions out there where you might get a heck of a lot more death benefit, this is essentially you're really buying it for the LTC leverage and the life insurance is secondary. So it's an oh, by the way, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. And that allows, in my opinion, a little bit more flexible underwriting on the life insurance solutions. Then on the flip side, you also have the annuity solutions. Those are even less underwriting because you don't have the tax-free death benefit. If you use it, you've got the additional leverage. For example, some of the solutions out there, maybe you put in $100,000, you get $300,000 for care. There's no sexy income riders. You're not buying it for accumulation, but you are going to get tax-efficient pennies on the dollar leverage for care, and the annuity will pass to the beneficiaries if you don't use it. So it allows for even more flexible underwriting. You're going to see simplified issue on all of the annuity hybrid products.
And something, Alecia, that you made mention to, you even nowadays have the ability to take a pre-tax or qualified asset and fund it into one of these hybrid long-term cares. Now, are a lot of carriers doing that, or is that very much limited in terms of which long-term care providers are allowing that?
That's a great question. Right now, there's only one carrier that will take qualified money directly. I like to call it the McDonald's Happy Meal of long-term care solutions. You can buy your hamburger, fries, and drinks separately. So we can still structure it similar to that one carrier. What that one carrier does is kind of a Roth conversion on steroids for long-term care. So you're taking the qualified money, but you're also, you can't put qualified dollars directly into a life contract. So it's a combination of an IRA and a 10-pay life insurance solution. So you're able to spread the tax liability out, but day one, dollar one, you get tax-efficient long-term care solutions, or long-term care leverage, so to speak. And if you want to do it yourself, as far as buying your hamburger, fries, and drinks separately, you could fund that a number of different ways. You can do a SPIA, a single premium immediate annuity, funding a 10-pay. You could take distributions from your IRA or qualified dollars and just fund a policy over time. I mean, there are a lot of ways to skin a cat, so to speak.
Right.
So you have a lot of flexibility, whether there's only one carrier or 10 carriers that have qualified dollars as a solution.
Do you see more companies offering that as a solution here in the next 3-5 years?
Absolutely. I know of a couple of different carriers right now that are working on solutions. And because we all have a disproportionate amount of money in qualified funds, I think we'll see new carriers enter the space.
Right.
And I'll see old carriers offer that type of solution because it is a great way to put a plan in place.
Well, there's going to have to be adaptation. I mean, it's such an insidious potential risk on our culture. I mean, it could, as we all know, it can just devastate portfolios. But I'm curious, in your years of experience, would you say that there's like a sweet spot based on age when people should be considering whether that's the hybrid approach or the old types of policies? Do you see that as an important point?
Absolutely. You've never been younger and healthier than you are today. So I recommend obviously starting as early as you can.
Yeah.
As we age, we become, we become more frail. We have more health issues. And certainly we have long-term care solutions with limited underwriting and even a guaranteed issue chassis. It's going to cost you less if you're younger. And again, you're going to get more leverage, especially on the life insurance chassis. So I would say the sweet spot on the life insurance side of the house is going to be 70 or below. I don't think we're going to convince an 18-year-old to buy long-term care, but
Sure.
certainly if they had the ability to, it would be a great idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And the other thing I thought might be helpful for our listeners is just, I know it's different all throughout the country, but the different levels per month that people are faced to maybe try to solve, whether it's like an assisted living type of situation or a memory care type of situation.
Yeah, or it could even be home care. Where
care.
a lot of these
What
plans-
ranges are we seeing here that people are going to have to think through to kind of solve half of it, solve all of it, things like that?
I think that's a great point to bring up. I never recommend covering 100% of the costs. We'd all be insurance poor, not to mention the fact that we have other assets that can supplement the care needs. So what I typically recommend is let's cover at least 50% of the high-end risk, which is nursing home. That's typically going to cost a lot more. And that will, in most states, cover almost 100% of home care and assisted living. It's a reasonable place to start. I know that me personally, I want to receive care in the home, so I'm not quite as concerned about a facility, and I can probably cover some of that cost. It's like co-insuring on health insurance. So that's really what I recommend. If you want to know what the cost of care is, there's a great website. If you go to longtermcare.gov, listeners, it's got a lot of great general information, like who needs care, how long you might need care, the type of care services available. And then, of course, there's a cost of care link, and it's going to redirect you back to the Care Scout cost of care survey. You can plug in any numbers in the country, city, zip code, and it's going to pull up those local costs. So please, I recommend
fantastic.
looking at that.
That's super helpful.
Absolutely.
Really
And
helpful.
again, it's going to help you have a starting place. For example, in North Carolina, I'm in the Charlotte area. It's running around almost $12,000 a month for nursing home, and home health care is around $6,000. So it's typically about half the cost, and that's where I like to start.
That's
So in that case, would you recommend getting $6,000 of coverage or $3,000?
$6,000 a month, because I
Okay.
want to try to cover as much of that home care cost as possible, because that's where my preference is for care setting.
Right.
And hopefully I won't go into a nursing home, but if I do, it'll at least cover half, and then I'll be able to supplement with my income and my other assets.
Yeah. And, we do a lot as financial professionals having, Keystone Financial Group. So we do a lot of retirement income and distribution planning. So the concept and the topic of long-term care is something we talk a lot about. We get a lot of pushback on, well, I can't afford that. I can't afford long-term care. If I look at my assets, I need them to, provide my lifestyle, provide the cash flow necessary in my lifestyle. So if someone says, okay, I'm not interested in a long-term policy in and of itself, a standalone, how do you respond to that? Because obviously if they don't do anything, then,
Their
what
money is their
yeah,
plan.
what's their
right.
solution, right? which we talked about.
self-finance.
Absolutely. So, and I always say this too: if you haven't allocated something, you've allocated everything. So it's important to really have that discussion. I think the biggest thing for self-funders is to know if something were to happen tomorrow, which asset would you liquidate first? Because if you don't have a plan, you're going to have to pay for it, or your family's going to have to step in. And let me tell you, long-term care doesn't bring families together. It tears families apart. So it's really important to put a plan of care down and share it with your family. So if you decide to not insure against the risk and you're self-funding, maybe tell your family or write a plan of care down. Again, how are you going to pay for it? Where do you want to receive your care? And I say this jokingly, but if you don't have a plan, your kids may take you out back and hose you off. And I'm partially kidding there, but it's helpful.
Don't do that, huddlers. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Treat your parents better.
That's so funny. I had my late father-in-law used to say, hey, if something happens where I'm not with it mentally, wheel me somewhere and just leave me there, right? Obviously, that's not going to happen. But in all seriousness, what I see happening a lot of times is people, they don't have a plan, and then you'll hear somebody say, well, when I'm at that age, just figure it out then. And what you realize, it's too late at that point in time.
Well, right.
You can't get into internet sites. You need verification, the two-step verification. People have sound mind at that time to tell you, hey, this is where this thing is. This is where this password is. Can you have any stories or speak to that so that listeners can understand how important it is to really start that plan now versus waiting until you see a decline in mental health?
Absolutely. Take my family, for example. My mom is 82. She's been twice widowed. My biological dad died when I was 4. My stepdad passed away at the beginning of the pandemic from a short illness. So she's alone. My older brother's about 10 minutes away. I'm about an hour and 15 minutes one way. And I have a sister in western North Carolina about 4.5 hours away, and a brother in Hilton Head. She didn't buy a plan because we were in a car accident and she couldn't qualify. So guess who is Mom's plan? I'm Mom's plan.
You are. Yeah.
Absolutely. And let me give you an example of what this looks like. She got sick. It's been a little over a year ago. I drove down every day for 2 weeks. I took her food. I took her medicine. I gave her hugs. I made sure Mom was okay. Guys, ask me how many times my older brother, who was 10 minutes away, went to go help Mom.
Was it 1? No, 0. I was giving the benefit of the doubt. I thought maybe 1.
But you're right. It's usually reliant on one of the siblings. And like you said, that doesn't bring families together.
Yes.
That tears them apart.
Yeah. And B, you talked about it.
Right.
What you're going through, with your mother-in-law. And my mother-in-law lives with us and has since 6 months into COVID. We moved her out of assisted living. So believe me, the burden falls on the family.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing this episode. It's just too important of a topic. It's too real.
Yeah. And the one last thing before we kind of close things up, within planning, we do use a lot of different strategies. What are your thoughts on, if we using life insurance as a quote unquote supplemental long-term care? How do you feel about that?
Like the accelerated death benefit riders on traditional long-term or life insurance chassis, excuse me.
Absolutely. So what I'll tell you is the best plan to have in place is the one that's in place when you need it. So those are still solutions. What I will tell you is if you're really buying those for long-term care purposes, it might not be the right solution. It's a great supplement.
Right.
Those are generally going to be death benefit first, so life insurance first, and the long-term care is secondary. Whereas some of these hybrid or asset-based LTC solutions, they're really built for long-term care first. You still have a death benefit, but that's secondary.
Right.
So what I will tell you is there's still solutions. Just like annuities with income doublers and chronic illness riders, accelerated death benefit. They're all solutions. But which one is the best solution?
Right.
So if you have a solution, I would recommend reviewing it. If it is your long-term care plan, it certainly would be helpful to know how much of a benefit you're going to get. Is it going to be enough? And again, are you truly buying it for long-term care, or are you buying it for life insurance?
Yeah.
It's a great supplement is what I'll tell you.
So
Yeah,
Alecia,
I call it the Aflac of long-term care.
right.
That's
The
right.
supplemental benefit.
That's right. Alecia, you talked a lot about the hybrid approaches, and obviously those are more prevalent in the industry now. Can somebody even get a traditional long-term care policy the ways that they were structured years ago? Are those still in the marketplace?
So there are currently 4 traditional long-term care insurance companies in the independent space. There are not a lot left.
Not a lot.
They are they're dinosaurs, right? But you can still get them.
Okay.
Again, they're not bad contracts. I think they're priced better. We're not going to see as many rate increases, but you do not have the guarantees you have with the asset base, which is why you're seeing less carriers in that space and more carriers
Right.
on the hybrid side.
Makes sense.
Super helpful.
It makes sense.
Super helpful. I said in a prior podcast that when I first got into this industry, I never thought long-term care was the need that it actually is. And now I'm experiencing it with multiple people in my family, and it's real. And I think that is true for a lot of our clients, people that we work with. And if it's not real yet for some people, it will be real in the near future. We always say, if you don't have a policy, you better plan for it some way, segment assets, whatever that is. So this was really helpful having you on today. And
Absolutely.
thank you
Yep.
for bringing some clarity with our listeners. Thank you for your partnership and what you do for our firm. We find it extremely beneficial. So Alecia, with that, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. Huddlers, thank you for your time today and for listening. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you share this with people that you care and love about.
Yeah, like and follow.
Yeah, and if you have
Keep tuning in.
and if you have other questions that you want, things that you want us to talk about, please let us know.
Yeah. Thank you,
Everybody,
Alecia.
Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Glad to be here.
Take care.